Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. In the quiet town of Eldritch Hollow, nestled in the heart of thick, ancient woods, tranquility disguised a grim reality. Here whispers of the past lingered like mist, often forgotten but never entirely lost. The people of Eldritch Hollow prided themselves on their tight-knit community. Barbecues, bake sales, and weekend fairs fostered relationships that took years to forge, while the autumn leaves painted the streets in hues of gold and crimson. But beneath this picturesque facade lay secrets that would send ripples of horror through its cobbled streets of darkness, that would unravel the fabric of their lives. The year was 1992 when the first signs of trouble began to emerge. A series of unsettling rumors spread throughout the town, igniting a smoldering sense of dread. Pets were disappearing. People whispered about the shadows in the woods, and late-night phone calls, filled with frantic voices, disrupted the quiet evenings. It felt like a storm was brewing, too understated to fathom but rife with tension. That tension reached its peak one fateful September evening when 15-year-old Clara Evans vanished without a trace. This wasn't the first missing person case in Eldritch Hollow, but Clara's disappearance was different. Clara was a bright girl with dreams of studying environmental science, someone who lit up rooms with her infectious laughter. Her absence echoed loudly, with the irony of life halted, a promise unfulfilled. As townsfolk plastered posters of Clara all over Eldritch Hollow, each face told the same story of hope, intertwined with despair. Impending tragedy lingered, an unseen predator circling amid the quiet relief of autumn's embrace. Little did the residents know, Clara's case would reveal more than just a disappearance. It would unearth buried secrets, long-held grudges, and a darkness that intertwined the lives of those who called Eldritch Hollow home. The victim, Clara Evans, was known for her fierce determination and infectious spirit. At 15, she embodied the characteristics of a leader, rallying her friends to protect the environment and advocating for the preservation of Eldritch Hollow's natural beauty. With unruly chestnut hair that fell just above her bright green eyes, Clara was an unmistakable presence in her school halls. Teachers noted her resilience, while classmates admired her kindness and ability to inspire others. On sunny afternoons, she could be found sitting cross-legged in the grass of Maple Park, her sketchbook open, capturing the beauty of her surroundings. Clara's drawings were vivid and palpable, infused with a passion that made the mundane seem extraordinary. Underneath her artistic exterior, she nurtured a growing anxiety. Her dreams were laced with shadows of uncertainty, the world beyond Eldritch Hollow, an unknown territory fraught with challenges. Yet, under the weight of her aspirations, she pressed on, always seeking to carve out a legacy rooted in her love for nature. But being a bright star came with its complications. Clara was acutely aware of the pressure that came from her mother, Helen, who had her own set of dreams for her daughter: a scholarship, a university on the verge of greatness. Their relationship, though filled with love, often became a battlefield of expectations and disappointments. Clara longed for her mother's approval, but struggled to understand the narrow path Helen envisioned for her. The evening before her disappearance, Clara had seemed unusually reflective. A rare intensity revealed itself in her voice as she expressed her concerns about a recently reported toxic spill in a nearby reservoir. She grasped the enormity of her cause wholeheartedly. There was an undercurrent of unease in her words, a whisper that something was wrong. As daylight faded, the laughter of a girl untouched by darkness echoed in the empty streets. But the tranquil night would soon give way to a desperate search for her. Clara Evans was not just a missing girl. She was a bright light extinguished too soon, leaving echoes of confusion and heartache in her wake. The crime scene. The morning of September 15th dawned with a heavy mist that clung to the ground, veiling Eldritch Hollow in an air of foreboding. Clara had not returned home, and as the sun rose higher in the sky, dread began to seep into the hearts of her family and friends. Helen Evans, frantic, dialed the phones of every person Clara had mentioned she might be with. With each unanswered call, her anxiety escalated into a whirlwind of fear and helplessness. After hours of searching the neighboring woods with two distraught friends, a decision was made. This was no ordinary case of a girl out past curfew. The local police were alerted, and soon the town's small station was abuzz with activity. Officers pored over reports, interviewing those who might have seen Clara the previous day. By late morning, a search party was formed, combing through the thickets and brambles near Maple Park, eager to recover a glimmer of hope. The forest, usually alive with the sounds of rustling leaves and chirping birds, now felt alive with an eerie silence as the search escalated. As the search extended further into the thick woods, a scream pierced the stillness, a shrill sound that froze the hearts of all who heard it. A group of volunteers, driven by desperation, had found Clara's backpack. It lay half-buried beneath a tangle of roots, its once bright fabric now muted with dirt and scratches. The sight was jarring. Clara's name was written in bold letters on the tag, a beacon of her identity amidst the chaos that was about to unfold. Twilight descended slowly as the search turned frantic, and the atmosphere tensed as officers scoured the area where the backpack had been found. They scoured every nook and cranny until, just after dusk, lifeless body of Gypsy. She lay hidden among the underbrush, her vibrant spirit snuffed out, leaving nothing but whispers of heartbreak echoing through the trees. The crime scene was a solemn tableau, shards of broken dreams scattered like fallen leaves. As officers flooded the scene to establish control, the savage reality began to sink in, the darkness of fear intertwining with the grief that gripped Eldritch Hollow. It was, for all involved, a stark reminder that there was indeed something monstrous lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly quaint community. The early investigation. The sun rose over Eldritch Hollow on a day fraught with sorrow and uncertainty. As the news of Clara's death rippled through the town, the gravity of the event hinged upon the shoulders of Detective Mark Dawson, an experienced investigator known for his relentless pursuit of justice. He stepped into the unfolding tragedy with a heavy heart. He had seen too many families in turmoil, and the thought of another child lost to the dark undertones of humanity weighed heavily on his conscience. Dawson arrived at the crime scene, where a patchwork of blue crime scene tape marked the perimeter, contrasting starkly with the lush greens of the surrounding forest. The air carried a stomach-churning odor of decay mixed with the damp earth elements that would make unstable memories for all who entered. questions echoed endlessly. Who was last seen with Clara? Did she have any enemies in town? As Dawson delved deeper into Clara's life, he placed hope in the information provided by friends and family. Her mother, Helen, was distraught, yet recounting important details about her daughter would be crucial. Clara was known to engage in environmental activism, often attending town meetings to confront local leaders about policies affecting the river basin. This, Dawson noted, could be a point of contention. He had seen how heated passions could turn into bitterness, and bitterness sometimes bled into deeper motivation. With a view towards her activities, Dawson turned to Clara's best friends, Sarah and Emily, hoping their memories would reveal anything that could unlock the mystery. They spoke of Clara's determination, their faces were lined with fear. Was there a rift among them? As every lead flowed into his investigative stream, he couldn't shake off the chilling notion that someone within this tight-knit community may have harbored secrets veiled in jealousy or desire for control. Days ticked by, marked with futile whispers of rumors and fleeting leads. But no one was closer to the truth. As Dawson pieced together a tapestry of Clara's world, it became clear that the web of darkness entangled not just Clara, but the entire town, a fragile thread binding the innocuous and the sinister, as they waited for an answer that hung heavily over Eldritch Hollow. The dead ends. Days turned into weeks, yet the investigation into Clara's death lingered like a lingering fog over Eldritch Hollow. Detective Mark Dawson found himself caught in an ever-tightening web of unanswered questions in a town where everyone seemed to know everyone. The tight-knit community transformed into an incongruous maze, with unspoken fears and veiled secrets hiding behind closed doors. Initial leads faded swiftly, leaving Dawson frustrated. Clara's friends had shared vague recollections that offered little substance. A passing encounter with a mysterious figure during one of Clara's activist meetings, an argument overheard at the diner, each thread intertwined, yet no single lead could be woven into a coherent narrative. Suspects began to blur, and the camaraderie of Eldritch Hollow felt more like a fortress protecting unknown evils than a sanctuary of safety. Meanwhile, Helen Evans struggled with her grief, attending therapy sessions to combat the overwhelming sadness. Yet, she also found solace in attending town meetings, desperately seeking answers. She had become increasingly vocal about the toxic spill, and as she confronted local officials about accountability, Dawson began to wonder if Clara's activism had attracted unwanted attention. Perhaps someone viewed her as a threat, someone willing to silence her for their own interests. But concrete evidence eluded him. Leads pointed toward Ed Raines, a disgruntled factory worker with a history of disputes with environmental advocates. Yet his alibi of working late hours on the night of Clara's disappearance was ironclad. Next, there was Tara Green, the town librarian, who had shared heated exchanges with Clara regarding conservation efforts. Her whereabouts the night Clara vanished were also verified by multiple witnesses, leaving Dawson feeling the grip of despair start to tighten around him. Just when it seemed the walls were closing in, whispers in town ignited an unproductive cycle of rumor and speculation. Accusations of incompetence directed at the police department compounded frustration. The mounting pressure bore down on Dawson, who, despite his experience, felt the weight of the town's expectations. It was a cauldron boiling over, and answers remained frustratingly elusive. Yet in the midst of dead ends and dashed hopes, one nagging thought taunted him. How could a bright life like Clara's be extinguished without the faintest trace left behind? As he stared at the evidence board in his cramped office, dotted with messages and photographs of Clara, he realized that every face bore witness to the war between light and dark, a war that demanded to be fought, even when it seemed victory was but a distant promise. A break in the case. As autumn deepened, Eldritch Hollow took on a stark beauty tinged with uncertainty. Leaves danced to the ground, leaving the trees skeletal and bare, much like Dawson's dwindling hope. In the case, the passage of time cast an unforgiving light on his investigation, but a serendipitous meeting on an unremarkable Thursday would change everything. Dawson had decided to revisit the old quarry, a site many locals had long abjured due to its sinister reputation. Tales of accidents and disappearances had woven themselves into the fabric of town lore, but instinct drew him there. Nonetheless, he surveyed the rocky outcroppings and crumbling cliffs, guided by a feeling he could not quite articulate. He felt different today, like the air buzzed with suppressed anticipation. As he poked around, a glint caught his eye. There, half hidden beneath a rock, was a silver bracelet, with Clara's initials engraved upon it. The recognition twisted in his gut like a knife. The sheer improbability of finding something so personal in a place so bleak set off alarm bells in his mind. Dawson carefully pulled it from the ground, the cool metal seeming to pulse with the memories of its wearer, a haunting reminder of Clara's absence. With renewed urgency, Dawson returned to the station where he recorded his discovery. After ensuring the bracelet was processed as evidence, he sought out Clara's friends once more. This time, when he presented the bracelet, their shocked faces conveyed the gravity of what had been hidden. Sarah hesitated, but had eventually recounted a late night when Clara had mentioned Abdiah, her persistent admirer from another school, who had shown up at an event against her wishes. Though he was never mentioned in the investigation before, his name surfaced as Jay and became a focal point for Dawson's renewed scrutiny. As days turned into late nights, Dawson's focus shifted to Jay. He began digging deeper into the young man's background. It turned out he had a series of run-ins with law enforcement, escalating from tame infractions to more serious allegations. The prickles of concern Dawson felt melded into a sense of urgency. If Jay was indeed connected to Clara, the answers he sought were closer than they ever had been. With this new lead igniting the motivation in Dawson's spirit, he began to explore Jay's whereabouts on the night of Clara's disappearance. Factor in the allure of obsession alongside a dash of reckless abandon, and a new theory developed. There was now a flicker of light in the engulfing darkness, a sense that perhaps the threads of truth might finally begin to unravel. Clara Evans' story was about to take a new turn, and as Dawson prepared to confront Jay, determination surged forth. The long, secluded road to justice was finally beginning to clear. The suspect. Dawson's heart raced as he approached the rundown house on the outskirts of Eldritch Hollow, where Jay lived with his single mother. The sight of peeling paint and overgrown weeds seemed to echo the tumultuous life Jay had led. A part of the detective braced for confrontation. Another part, however, felt the weight of relentless hope pushing him forward. The time had come to unearth the truth. As he knocked, the sound reverberated through the stillness, eerily accentuating the growing tension. A moment later, Jay appeared in the doorway, his tattoos peeking out from beneath the sleeves of a faded black t-shirt, a habitual defiance clouding his demeanor. The boy, I'm 16. I held an ambiguity that oscillated between bravado and fear. Dawson noted the way Jay's eyes darted, betraying a nervous energy as he shifted from foot to foot, the tension thick enough to slice through. "Are you Jay?" Dawson asked, maintaining a calm demeanor while ensuring every word carried authority. Jay nodded, his face a mix of curiosity and unease. "We to talk about Clara Evans." The shadow flickered across Jay's face at the mention of Clara's name, but he quickly masked it with a faint smirk. "What about her?" he replied, attempting nonchalance but lacking conviction. Dawson moved closer, taking note of the boy's body languid slumped shoulders, crossed arms, and narrowed eyes. "We found something of hers," he stated, producing the silver bracelet from his pocket. The moment Jay set eyes on it, the smirk vanished, leaving a pale pallor in its place. Dawson leaned in, his voice lowering. "This was found at the quarry. Would you like to explain how it ended up there?" Jay's reaction was instinctual, recoiling slightly as if struck. "I don't know. I didn't touch her stuff," he stuttered. Each word reeked of a deer caught in headlights, and Dawson sensed the crack in Jay's facade. "I swear I barely even knew her." Dawson pressed on, recalling the unverified accounts of Clara's discomfort with Jay hanging around her activist events. "But you were interested in her, right? What were your interactions like? For a heartbeat?" Jay's bravado cracked entirely. "She didn't want anything to do with me. I only asked her to hang out a couple of times." As the conversation unfolded, Dawson noted how Jay struggled to keep his story intact, invited more questions. The pieces of his narrative failing to mesh. The detective challenged Jay further, sensing the blood pumping through tension-enhanced tempos in the room, not letting him off the hook. The easily refutable alibis fell from Jay's lips like autumn leaves, and each misstep further solidified Dawson's mounting suspicion. In that charged space, the truth danced just out of reach, but it was clear as day. Clara had seen something she shouldn't have, had rejected someone who refused to be cast aside, and somewhere in the shadows, fear became anger that could manifest into violence. With each fleeting second, Dawson understood that Jay had become the missing piece of a puzzle he'd so desperately tried to solve. As Dawson stood eye to eye with the boy, the confessions that lingered in the air screamed louder than silence. This was no simple case in a quiet town. It was a dark journey into obsession, and Dawson was about to peel back the layers to unearth the real story behind the tragedy that had unfolded. The trial. The courtroom where Jay was to stand trial was a solemn arena, a transformation of the once picturesque town of Eldritch Hollow into a crucible of justice and heartbreak. The air was dense with anticipation as townsfolk gathered, their expressions etched with varying degrees of hope and despair. Clara Evans' death hung like a dark cloud over them all, intertwining past grievances and present fears. Detective Mark Dawson entered the courtroom, feeling the lingering weight of the case that had consumed him for months. The memory of Clara, her laughter, her passion echoed in his mind as he took his seat behind the prosecution. Dawson felt he had betrayed her by failing to protect her, but he hoped this trial would bring her family the closure and justice they deserved. The trial began with the prosecution outlining the case against Jay. Clara's mother, Helen, sat in the front row, her face pale yet resolute, determined to reclaim her daughter's story. As evidence was presented, photos of the bracelet found at the quarry, testimonies from friends who recounted their fears surrounding Jay. The atmosphere grew heavy with emotion. Each word spoken was a reminder of the vibrant life that had been cut short. Dawson listened intently as witnesses described Clara's passion for life, her burgeoning activism, and the unsettling encounters with Jay. He felt the same unease that had settled within the community at the time of Clara's disappearance, the fear of someone lurking. Someone who couldn't reconcile rejection with reason. The evidence painted a damning portrait of obsession. Jay appeared more than just a heartbroken boy. He emerged as a potential predator. When Jay's defense took the stand, it leaned heavily on attacking the prosecution's case, attempting to cast doubt and portray him as an innocent boy, caught in a turbulent web of accusations. Despite everything, Jay maintained a stoic exterior, deflecting the emotional weight of the proceedings. But Dawson could see the cracks, the fidgeting fingers, the averted gaze during cross-examination that belied the toxic emotional undercurrent thrumming just beneath the surface. The testimony of the forensic experts illuminated the night of Clara's disappearance, their findings indicating a struggle. Harsh realities clawed their way into the consciousness of those present. Dawson's heart pounded as he revisited Clara's story. Moments of her life collided with the tragic end. An indelible narrative unfolding before their eyes. As Helen Evans took the stand, her voice trembled, but held a fierce intensity that resonated throughout the courtroom. My daughter deserved better. She deserved to grow up, to chase her dreams, she spoke, glancing defiantly at Jay. Tears spilled down her cheeks, raw anguish transforming the courtroom atmosphere into a sanctuary of shared grief. Dawson, who felt the collective breath of the crowd, the silent plea that justice would prevail. A hush enveloped the room as the gavel pounded, announcing the jury's deliberation. Tension coiled around every individual present, time dragging as they waited for the verdict that would either confirm their despair or rekindle hope amidst the darkness. The lead juror spoke in a measured tone. We find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder. A wave of emotion surged through the room, relief mingled with sorrow, a cascading tide that stripped the veil from Eldritch Hollow's unit. As the sentence was read, as murmurs rippled through the chamber, Dawson felt that the fight for Clara was not yet over. The road to healing would be long, twisting through valleys of anguish, but the light of justice pierced the shadows, offering a thread of possibility in a town trapped in the echoes of a profound tragedy. Clara's story had reached its climax, but her legacy would live on, an enduring reminder of the fragility of life intertwined with the strength of community. The aftermath. In the months following Jay's conviction, Eldritch Hollow bore scars both visible and unseen. A fragile peace enveloped the town, but the remnants of Clara Evans' tragic story lingered like an aftertaste that many would struggle to swallow. Detective Mark Dawson, no longer a mere investigator, but a witness to the fabric of a community torn asunder, felt the weight of those changes street by street. Clara's mother, Helen, threw herself into activism, channeling her grief into creating the Clara Evans Foundation. The foundation aimed to raise awareness about violence against youth, a painful reminder of how easily a child's vibrant future could be extinguished. Helen's relentless spirit sparked a flurry of community meetings, advocacy campaigns, and educational programs. As Dawson watched her transform pain into purpose, he felt a glimmer of hope flickering amidst the darkness that had engulfed them all. Yet the town itself was polarized. Some spoke in hushed tones about the trial, whispering doubts about the justice system and Jay's actions. Others lauded Helen's efforts, rallying behind her cause. But beneath the surface, the current of unresolved tension they waiting to surface. Friends turned into factions, and resources stretched thin as people debated how best to support mental health initiatives in the wake of Clara's death. Dawson remained busy, assigned to other cases, but the shadow of Clara's story shaped his work daily. He often found himself drawn back to conversations with Clara's friends, each grappling with their own demons as they wrestled with survival. In a landscape that seemed to have shifted overnight, they expressed feelings of guilt, wondering if they could have changed the course of events, if they could have somehow intervened before tragedy struck. As Clara's birthday approached, the community planned a memorial at Maple Park, where the young activist had spent many afternoons. A tree would be planted in her honor, a living tribute to her untamed spirit. Dawson attended, feeling the gravity of the occasion as townsfolk gathered under the expansive limes of old oaks, sharing stories of Clara, her laughter, her dreams, her passion. The evening air was thick with bittersweet remembrance, and candles danced in the twilight, flickering like the hope that still lingered. In those moments, Dawson realized that healing would take time. The layers of sorrow could not be rushed away. Each candle lit was a pledge, a promise to protect the innocent, to stand against silence, and to strive for understanding. As he stared at the tree, its newly buried roots digging deep into the earth, he felt a renewed commitment surge within him. The road ahead was uncertain, laden with grief. But in Clara's name, a movement was born, a chance for change. And as the wind whispered softly through the leaves, Dawson came to understand the power of legacy, and how even in death, Clara Evans would continue to inspire, empower, and transform Eldritch Hollow. In the face of darkness, the community gathered with determination, ready to face the weight of their grief together, aligned beneath a shared vision of hope. Reflection. As winter settled upon Eldritch Hollow, the sharp chill in the air served as a stark contrast to the warmth of the community's resilience. Detective Mark Dawson found himself lingering at the memory of Clara Evans, the vibrant, life extinguished too soon, and her profound impact on everyone connected to her. The investigation had been grueling, twisting through layers of grief and secrets, laying bare the fragility of innocence among the harsh realities of life. In the stillness of his office, Dawson reflected on the case, the faces of Clara's friends and family carving their stories into the recesses of his mind. Heartbroken yet determined, they shaped a movement that transcended tragedy, building a network focused on prevention and awareness. Clara had inspired others to stand against violence, her legacy sparking a dialogue of change through her foundation, a purpose woven from loss. This introspection propelled Dawson to dive deeper into the societal undercurrents that often go unnoticed. Fear, obsession, love, and rejection. These were the complexities of human emotion that could lead to the darkest corners of the mind. He recognized that while the case had painted a grim portrait of humanity, it also illuminated the strength of community and the ability to confront unspeakable terrors through unity.